Ever since the beginning of human civilization, man has strived to depict through art a hypothetical and supernatural peak of strength. Demigods with the strife and imperfections of us lessers, yet gifted powers fully impossible, yet oh so tantalizing for the usual person. The strength necessary to control the deadly forces of nature or the ever-spreading breath of the seas. And as societies fell and rose, this flashy representation of might reinvented itself. Every gaudy tale inching these powers closer and closer into the hands of the normal civilian. Though as is oh so human, these mythical powers are rarely gifted, but instead trapped and turned into tools. And like all tools and all things human, they have their limits, a system that they need to follow. A power or magic system, as used for fiction, is the conditions, limitations, and explanations given for the existence and use of supernatural abilities in a story. They are much more common than what you might first imagine, ranging in genres from thrillers to fantasy. They are also usually quintessential in the development of the world where your story takes place, a near necessity for maintaining a level of groundedness to the inherently fantastical topics of magic. Humans love finding patterns, and a list of rules given to your audience does a great job in keeping that pattern-seeking part of the brain satiated. All that said, there's a lot you can do with a power system, and at different levels of efficiency. And in this series, we will be looking through various standout examples and studying where these stories' power systems excel, falter, and what makes them so unique. How well does the writing incorporate the power system and use it to the plot and theme's advantage? How good is this power system at explaining and justifying the happenings of the story, and does it do so in inventive ways? And of course, how cool is the power system? This is Power Systematic. For this inaugural installment, we will be going through what might very well be the first thing that came to your mind when hearing the word power system. The predecessor to most of the more spiritually inclined and or aura-based power systems of future works, and the grandfather of the sleuth of shonen battle anime that this series will be delving into periodically. Of course, I'm talking about the Dragon Ball franchise's Ki system. Likely inspired by fellow shonen originator Fist of the North Star and general Eastern spiritualism, Dragon Ball's Ki system is one most renowned for its simplicity and its flashiness, the very thing that gave anime its fame as over-the-top renditions of kung fu movies. Its concept is a simple one. Ki translates directly to life energy, which as implied is an energy resting at the core of every living thing. Through enough training, you can manifest this energy into the rest of your body, granting you superhuman endurance, speed, and strength. Of course, the amount of ki you produce isn't standardized and must itself be trained almost like a muscle, slowly but surely growing through practice. Ki control is itself important, though as the concept of ki comes from meditative martial arts, this control is more tied to your state of mind than your physical expertise. Admittedly, this aspect of ki is not one often explored, left more as an implied hurdle that most everyone has surpassed. And in the early days of Dragon Ball, this limited list of attributes were enough. More an excuse to be cartoonish with violence in a way impossible for normal humans. Enemies with more creative powers usually devoid of this life energy manipulation. Though it's pretty early on when we as an audience are given a taste of just how far this ki system can really go, with flashy demonstrations on how to manifest it beyond your body, usually in beams of burning energy. The Kamehameha, originally demonstrated by Goku's elderly mentor Master Roshi, is a smart and thoughtful early inclusion where Akira Toriyama quickly answers the question of just how far this ki thing can go. A pure and powerful return on investment for the expertise in ki necessary to do it. Though perhaps Toriyama didn't quite consider the obvious follow-up questions that such a unique display would bring. Well, if ki can make a powerful beam of energy that can destroy moons, what else can it do? And in a way, that was what truly opened the floodgates of Ki, as later we will learn that there is actually very little it can't do. But for now, Ki's limit was a rather grounded one visually not too different from normal human exertion, hardening with training and debilitating with exhaustion, truly an extension of the body. An exaggerated version of such, granted, though this cartoonish sensibility worked almost exclusively to Ki's benefit, as it did very little in explaining most of the odd fairy tale-esque happenings of early Dragon Ball, the show's generally lighter tone doing most of the work on that front. Though it's as the manga transitions into the part of the story that the anime adaptation would later separate into Dragon Ball Z, where Ki is truly given the spotlight. For those of you not super familiar with Dragon Ball's sudden turn towards sci-fi, it is kicked off by a time skip and a status quo shaken reveal of protagonist Son Goku's true origins. To even his own surprise, Goku is told he's a member of a now mostly extinct alien super race of warriors called Saiyans, who send their young to destroy weak planets with their uncontrollable great ape forms, a bloodlust knocked out of the estranged martial artist by a hit on the head when he was young. Goku's Superman-esque origin was expanded upon and retconned later to be even more like Superman's, but that has little to do with Ki, so we'll skip right by it until relevant. What is important for this discussion on Ki is the trio of Saiyans that later come to Earth in hope of doing what Goku could not as a child, and also in search of the titular Dragon Balls, of course. Raditz, Nappa, and Vegeta indirectly bring a new era of Ki, where each character and fight incorporates Ki not in the subtle ways of heightened human ability, even though you intuitively understand that it is also being used for that, but in flashy, increasingly varied special moves. If you start your Dragon Ball journey with C, the odd applications of Ki, which are otherwise left unexplained by the system, seem like just normal and accepted aspects of this world. Though do not be confused, the shift is very noticeable. What before was limited to different variations of pure burning energy shaped into cylinders and or spheres is now versatile enough to create sentient, self-destructive plant monsters, technical enough to shape into a makeshift moon, so close to the real thing that it triggers werewolf-like transformations, creative enough that you can impose limitations of specific moves to increase their strength, such as the coiling beam attack of Piccolo. You can have your Ki attacks cut instead of burn. You can share your Ki with others to create stronger attacks. Hell, you can even blow yourself up with your Ki, which in some way is stronger than just emptying out your Ki all on one person. And that's really the running theme with these increasingly cool displays. You just have to trust that it works. The explanation of Ki being one's life energy becomes more and more vague, the text failing to explain what this energy's limitations are or why one's spiritual essence would in any way be able to create a moon. What is the process of creating a technique? What study of Ki is necessary to learn that there's a difference between slowly channeling your energy through your fingers for an extended period of time and just using all of it in a one-go kamikaze attack? In a way, it seems purposefully up for audience interpretation, and in the moment, you don't really pay much attention to it. The battle choreography, creativity of powers, and incredible posing keep you more than engaged. I mention it though because it exemplifies a rather annoying flaw of Dragon Ball's Ki system. Its hodgepodge approach to character abilities, combined with Dragon Ball's practice to improve martial arts philosophy, means that characters can demonstrate a certain power set at the start of a fight before pulling a completely unbeknownst and mechanically different ability, or more commonly a transformation, out of thin air. This isn't inherently an issue and can be done well, but when the Ki system does nothing to establish limitations on itself or an explanation as to how it is used beyond needing to train it, Vegeta creating a moon has the risk of breaking the audience's suspension of disbelief. Following the Saiyan saga, Dragon Ball transitions to the Namek saga, a fully sci-fi arc led by one of the greatest villains ever written, the space tyrant, Frieza. Frieza, beyond eating up every scene he's in, is extraordinarily powerful, a mutant with ki beyond any other race or species, a strength we get a first row seat to in a flashback demonstration of Planet Vegeta's, the home of the Saiyans, untimely destruction. Even during the fight with the Saiyans, with all its new and flashy powers, there was a limit to their raw strength. Many of the techniques were utility-based, and even the most destructive of attacks never strayed too far from the strongest attacks from earlier in the series. Frieza changes this fully. Cackling, staring down at the entire race of monkeys he plans to eradicate. With just one finger, Frieza manifests a planet-sized ball of pure ki energy. Casually, he tosses it to the planet he hovered over, destroying it upon contact. This was a show of strength previously unseen, a scene meant to instill a certain dread in the audience, a worry at just what monstrous creature the heroes would now need to fight. It is also the start of Dragon Ball's still very prominent fight with power creep. Power creep, a video game term meant to signify the addition of new mechanics so strong that they make previous ones obsolete, is similarly used often to describe shonen battle anime, specifically when referring to an increase in the base power level needed to overcome new conflicts, which makes weaker characters virtually useless in resolving it. Frieza himself is not the issue here, have you? His extraordinary power purposefully meant to be impossible to overcome for the majority of the cast. It isn't until Goku unlocks the mysterious and legendary Super Saiyan that Frieza, in fear of confronting accidentally Catalyst, that he is finally defeated. Beyond any reservations you might have for having the series that preaches being able to defeat any powerful foe through training alone, having their most powerful foe beaten by an emotionally charged transformation only possible if you pertain to a certain super race of warriors, this is an otherwise coherent and impactful end to the saga. The issue comes with what this fight signifies. The invading Saiyans being the protagonist's strongest foes was thrilling. Frieza being even more powerful only heightened that emotion. And while Frieza and the Super Saiyan transformation would have been good caps of strength, Ki knows of no such thing. I noted before that Ki is trained like a muscle, yet it is important to note that muscles have inherent limits to how big they can grow, based usually on your genetics. Ki, on the other hand, can be trained to near infinite lengths. So forms a big problem with the ki system, which is its skill ceiling, or lack thereof. Not every character is going to be as dedicated to martial arts as Goku and Vegeta are. That difference in priority is necessary for a good ensemble. But when there's no end to how far training can take you, and you need villains to challenge the most exercise-obsessed characters in your cast, previously intimidating and important characters like Yamcha, Tien, and Master Roshi become relatively as powerful as a normal civilian. This also risks alienating parts of your audience not as interested in increasingly absurd demonstrations of magical strength, while creating an audience that will only be satisfied with newer and stronger power-ups. This has proven such an irritating needle in this franchise's side that they've attempted to revert the power levels of its characters by turning them into children twice. And truly, that is the ki system's biggest dark spot. This compulsive need to keep each threat unequivocally stronger in all regards to the last means that the only real way to defeat them is to get better at using ki, or god ki, or whatever new ki related transformation you have. Better ki makes you stronger, faster, more aware, more durable, more versatile in combat. There's nothing ki can't do. And so fights become an arm wrestling match where the stronger side will undoubtedly win. There's no room for anything else when your enemies can punch holes through time. Even Piccolo and Krillin, who are meant to be more savvy, trickery fighters that don't rely on pure strength, are either useless against the main villains or need a raw power-up to compete. And beyond this turning the series into a collection of rather stale fights with increasingly stale villains, relying fully on its often superb choreography and spectacle, it is also nearly antithesis to the creative and cartoonish martial arts that the original Dragon Ball run was all about. Quick, unscripted side note here, since I know people are going to mention it or are probably thinking it. The Tournament of Power in Dragon Ball Super did include Master Roshi and Tien as competitors that did do stuff. Admittedly, Tien did not do much, but Master Roshi at least shallowly seemed useful. But I do want to note that these two characters, due to the show's almost compulsive need to keep track of everyone's power levels and be accurate to them, which is, admirable in its own front, did have them fight much weaker characters that would have probably been, instantly annihilated if they faced, anyone stronger than, Piccolo. And even the ones that didn't, were characters that, for all intents and purposes, were filler characters meant for filler fights that were basically filler episodes, while they animated Goku and Vegeta's fights, which were the ones that actually mattered and were about characters that were actually important. I think calling Tien and Master Roshi useful in the Tournament of Power is like saying that a toothpick is useful to pick up rice when you have a vacuum cleaner right next to you. It's a bit of a stretch. Alright, back to the video. The increased importance of Ki as a determiner of plot hooks and fights has led to a cycle where every major conflict is resolved through either previously unestablished new abilities and transformations, or through a metaphorical or literal beam struggle where the strongest always wins. Dragon Ball in this way has merchandised itself into needing new and better and flashier things for people to gawk at every arc. No better proof of this exists than the spin-off series Dragon Ball Heroes, where a literally collectible array of absurdly and nonsensically powerful characters fight each other for the sake of fighting each other. Of course, it's important to note that this is all the fault of a collection of questionable writing decisions and capitalistic venturing, not the Ki system being inherently unworkable. But a power system is meant to hold your world accountable, to create a toy box where you can play without getting too wild. If as a writer you fail to create appropriate barriers in this sandbox, who can blame you for getting a bit out of hand? I like to talk. Hope you like to listen.